A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" And Jesus answered, "Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. We have to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva and smeared the clay on his eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is." But others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." So they said to him, "How were your eyes opened?" He replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went there and washed and was able to see." And they said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees, that Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such things?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." Now the Jews did not believe that he had been blind and gained his sight, until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. They asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" His parents answered and said, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone acknowledged him as the Christ, he would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, "He is of age, question him." So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is that I was blind, and now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" They ridiculed him and said, "You are that man's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we do not know where this one is from." The man answered and said to them, "This is what is so amazing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to him. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and you are trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that he had been thrown out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and he worshipped him. Then Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind." Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard this and said to him, Surely we are not also blind, are we? Jesus said to them, If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, We see, so your sin remains. The Gospel of the Lord. For many of us, misplacing our eyeglasses is as close as we will get to understanding the physical blindness of the man born blind in today's gospel. And yet it is important that we see ourselves in that nameless blind man, because each one of us has truly also been born blind. That is why St. Augustine, commenting on this gospel passage, wrote, This blind man is the human race. Now, what Augustine meant, of course, is that ever since our first parents sinned in the Garden of Eden by believing the lie of the serpent, that their eyes would be opened and that they would be like God if they disobeyed him and ate the forbidden fruit, so too have we, as their descendants, inherited original sin, which has caused us to be blind to the truth. In fact, ever since that day Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, all of humanity has stumbled about in darkness and sin, and like the blind man, we too are unable to heal ourselves. But that is why Jesus takes on human flesh. He comes to heal us of our blindness, to do for us what he did for the man of the gospel, that is, to open our eyes to see the light, and to give us eyes of faith. Jesus came to restore and recreate us as we were meant to be from the first moment of creation. This helps us to understand then why Jesus smears this man's eyes with mud made from his own saliva. You see, what Jesus was doing through this seemingly crude act was to take us back to the story of creation when God formed man from the dust of the earth and then breathed life into him. Jesus was making it clear that the same hand of God that originally created us from dust was the same hand who now used mud to heal this blind man and recreate him. And by using his own saliva, Jesus was showing the power that comes from his mouth, which is, of course, the mouth of God himself. And finally, by sending the blind man to wash in the waters of the pool, Jesus is teaching us that through the waters of baptism, we too, like the man born blind, would also be recreated and receive the gift of faith and spiritual sight. Now we witness the blind man's new spiritual sight by what happens after he is healed. Slowly he experiences a process of conversion which is evidenced by his own words. For in his conversations with the Pharisees, he first refers to Jesus as being simply a man. Next, he affirms that Jesus is a prophet. And finally, he confesses that Jesus is Lord. Now, this process of faith and conversion must occur in each one of us as well. In other words, it is not enough to claim to be a Christian simply because we were washed in the waters of baptism. Rather, our relationship with Christ and our faith in him must grow, so that the light of Christ may dispel the darkness of sin in our own lives. After all, let's face it, within us, there are still pockets of darkness and spiritual blindness caused by sin. Isn't that why many times we fail to look or act differently from non-Christians? Isn't it why our weekend schedules are often more important than our showing up for the Sunday Eucharist? Isn't it why, although we profess to believe in Jesus, many who see our actions outside of the church would never even know it? And that is why these days of Lent challenge us to repent and to move toward greater conversion. In other words, we need to trust in God's love and mercy. For just as Jesus went looking for the man born blind outside the temple in today's gospel, so too does Jesus go searching for us in order to bring us the light of his grace and mercy, especially through a good and holy confession. For it is there in that sacrament that Jesus says to the hearts of those who are alienated or angry, "Let there be light." To those who feel unworthy of forgiveness, he says, "Let there be light." To those who are enslaved with a particular sin or addiction, let there be light. To those who are blinded to seeing Jesus in friend or enemy, let there be light. And if, my friends, we allow Jesus to speak these words to us and to heal us in this way, then like the man born blind, we too will be able to proclaim in faith, "One thing I know is that I was blind, and now I see."